into another edition of Mavs Latest. I am Josyah Howard. And earlier in the week, the Los Angeles Lakers sold for $10 billion. Just want to take a second for you to really internalize that number. $10 billion. And I bring up the Lakers sale because, according to sources, according to Ramona Shelburne, Jeannie Buss will not only remain the Lakers' governor, but will continue to run the team for at least a number of years, according to sources with knowledge of the deal. In other words, it was almost pretty much a guarantee that Jeannie Buss remaining in charge for the foreseeable future would be a part of the deal, and now new owner Mark Walter has fully endorsed this plan. Now, this is Mavs Latest. The Lakers and Mavericks might be married forever after the Luka trade, but I say that to say all of this, and I bring up the Luka trade to say all of this. Now, we all know Mark Cuban, he sold his majority shares of the Dallas Mavericks not too long ago. And he was supposed to stay on and be in charge of basketball decisions, just like Jeannie Buss, similarly in this Lakers sale. But it seemed like towards the end there that Mark Cuban kind of fell out of favor. I don't even know if that's the right way to say it. But it seemed like over time, he really lost influence. And power's not the right word because he lost his majority stake. The moment you lose your majority stake, you lose that power, right? Like, that's how it always goes. So, I bring all this up to say this. Why couldn't Mark get more of a concrete deal like Jeannie Buss did? And it seems that Mark Walter is all on board with this, and with his history with the Los Angeles Dodgers, he keeps good basketball people on. Now, I'm not going to say the Lakers have been amazing since Dr. Buss has passed, but they've been doing okay for themselves. They've got some talent. Obviously they bring in Anthony Davis, LeBron James, but they've drafted some young talent too over the years that got them Anthony Davis. So I really connect all this back to the Luka trade. And I say this to say, does the Lakers sale prove the Mavs sale fell short in terms of maybe Mark Cuban stepping back a little too soon? Because maybe he does save this Luka trade from happening. And again, if Luka doesn't get traded, maybe, Cooper Flag doesn't happen. Who knows? Luka could have been back with this team and they still could have been losing games and still ended up where they were, fighting in a play-in spot. So who knows? Obviously, that's if he's traded on the Lakers, it is what it is. But I just thought it would be fun to kind of look at this Lakers sale and say Mark Cuban was supposed to be in a similar setup to what Jeannie Buss is supposed to be set up in right now. So does Mark Walter phase away from the Buss family a little sooner than later? I don't know. It seems like a lot of these other new owners seem to be pushing away from their old owners, their old governors, from making big basketball decisions for the future, which is understandable because if you buy a team for, in this case, $10 billion, I want to be in charge of my team and I want to be making the big basketball decisions, or at least I want to be putting people in position that I choose that are making those decisions. So, Lakers sell for $10 billion. For me, I do think, I don't know if it's Mark Cuban that should have fought harder for the agreement. I don't know if it's the Mavericks that chose to kind of phase him out a little sooner rather than later. I don't know if that was Mark's decision. I don't know. But this Lakers sale made me think, made me ponder. Maybe the Mavericks could have had this transition of power from Mark Cuban. I don't know if more smoothly is the right way to put it, but it could have been a little bit more of a slow burn. And it's funny that I'm bringing up the Luka trade because I think Anthony Davis gets lost in all this. And here's why. It's not even necessarily just the on court value that I feel like gets missed. You know, just comparing it to a Luka who's going to give you over 39 and 9. Anthony Davis at his best probably give you about 26 and a half, 12 rebounds, 3 blocks a game, 4 to 6 assists a game. Like Anthony Davis at his peak is one of the greatest PER monsters we've ever seen, one of the best efficiency guys ever, one of the best defenders of our era. It's a shame he doesn't have a defensive player of the year. That's how much value he adds to a team on the basketball court. And then, to be honest, if you wanted to pivot, Anthony Davis nets you 4 first round picks, at least 3. I'd say in that. Now that depends when you move him. If you move him at 34 with 5 more injuries on him, you're not getting that. But if you move on from him, let's just say at the trade deadline this year, or next offseason, possibly, you can get 4 first rounders for Anthony Davis. And those first rounders, all these fans have been complaining about, including myself, that was not gotten in the Luka trade, you can at least flip for AD. So I think where I say Anthony Davis is being undervalued, it's not even just necessarily the on the court stuff, because the on the court stuff, when he plays, he's gonna bring it. But the off the court stuff, not in terms of him personally, I mean his impact off the court. He can net you some picks, and if you want, even if I wanted to say impact off the court in the literal sense, and I've said this before, he'll be great for Cooper Flag. Anthony Davis is a first ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt in my mind. He's a top 75 player already. Like when they did the top 75 team, he made the team, and I see no problem with that. So yeah, you're getting a top 75 player in the trade. Yes, I will always harp on the Luka trade. It was terrible. But you have to sit back and say, at least they got Anthony Davis, because they could turn Anthony Davis into something on the court, into assets on the team, and the values off the court, especially. Like, Cooper Flag changes so much for you. Like, you need Anthony Davis is a veteran. He's won a championship. He gets this league. He knows what it's like to be a superstar in this league. The business side of it, all of it. So again, that's where the value is in Anthony Davis. All of that stuff. It's not black or white, it's gray. And there's so much involved with just having Anthony Davis on the roster. But since we're on the Luka trade and kind of just things surrounded with it, I did want to note just one thing that Kendrick Perkins had brought up on the Road Trip podcast, and I did bring up Mark Cuban earlier in the Lakers sale part of things, but you have to look at it and say, how much is on Mavs brass for not getting on Luke enough to be in the shape you needed him to be in? And again, I think a lot of that stuff is overblown. It's like, dude, if he's having beers and smoking hookah or whatever the rumors are, well, drinking beer part is not a rumor. I seen that. But all things put together there, he still went to a finals and gave you 30 points per game, almost 10 and 10. So he's giving you the I don't even want to say the stats, because that makes it seem like it's not impactful, because he does impact games. And I get the whole defense wins championships, so defense wins championships. But, it's 2025. if you have an offensive monster like that, you could play through his defensive deficiencies. You could scheme a defense so that he's at least still playing good help team defense. And you've seen that this year with Luka on the Lakers. JJ made him a nice team defender. He got into passing lanes. He was able to get some steals. Now, did people still run right by him? Yeah, but that's want to. And there's just certain things where with Luka, you're not going to be able to coach him how to want to play defense. That's just not what's going to happen. So, just wanted to mention that, just, you know, AD's value to the team, and also just Doncic's accountability in some of this. And, you know, Perk on the Road Trip podcast bringing up Mark Cuban as somebody else that needs to kind of take on some of that blame. And I do too. Just because I think someone like him has a lot of influence to sit him down, and maybe he's done all this stuff, and that's not fair for us to just assume he hasn't and Luka just didn't listen. But, you know, sit him down and give him a man to man and let him know, like, if you want to get to where I know you want to get to, like, this is the stuff you got to do. So again, it's hard to not harp on the Luka trade, but, you know, I just thought all of that kind of went together, and, you know, the Lakers sale and AD's value to the team and the Luka trade. I just thought all that was a nice bow with that news. So just wanted to talk about that a little bit. Wanted to just go through some potential trade targets for the Mavericks if they do in fact trade up back into the first round. Couple names that Rafael Barlow, a co-host of Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, he brought up a few names I just wanted to go over. Nolan Traore, a guard from France. I definitely butchered that, but, you know, 6'3" guard, 36 minutes a game, averaging 18 points, 8 assists. Honestly, for San Quentin, and wow, I mean, playing overseas to average 18 and 8, that actually is really good numbers. I haven't gotten a chance to look at any of these guys' film or anything like that, but just looking at the, you know, the size and the raw stats, I think that could be somebody that could translate into a nice playmaker for the Mavericks. But Nick Clifford, excuse me, from Colorado State, 6'6" guard, averaged a career high 19 points a game. Also got 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal a game. Could score at every level. 49% from the floor, 37% from 3. Ooh, I might be a fan of Mr. Clifford here. 6'6" guard. I like size. You know, looks like, you know, getting a career high in your scoring shows you're growing. I like that. I like to see growth from these players in college. So, again, without seeing any stats, or excuse me, without seeing any film, and just look at the raw numbers. 6'6" guard, 19 career high, 19 a game in college, almost 10 rebounds a game, 4.5 assists. You know, 3-level scorer. I love that. I think that's the type of player the Mavericks should be looking into. The last player mentioned in this article, Walter Clayton Jr., somebody I've brought up on this program. It's just, I think that's the guy they need to target. Like, if he's still on the board and you have a potential trade, you need to pull the trigger and go draft this kid. He's a winner. It's hard to find winners nowadays. It's hard to find dogs nowadays. Someone that you can just give the ball and you're confident they're going to go get a bucket. And I think Walter Clayton is that, or Walter Clayton Jr. is that. I think at the very worst he can develop into like a great 6-man, like a Lou Will, like a Jamal Crawford type of player, Manu Ginobili. You know, just an all-time great 6-man, and at the very best, you know, like a few-time all-star guard, and can start if he gets that opportunity. So I think, you know, sky's the limit with him. I think, you know, Jalen Brunson is a pretty good comp for him. Yeah, that's the guy on draft night. If he's still on the board, I would love to see Dallas trade up and go grab him. Just a couple names, obviously all guards, as we kind of have that theme of the Mavericks looking to fill that playmaking spot as Kyrie Irving is recovering from that torn ACL. To wrap up Mavs latest, just wanted to do some quick Mavs chatter today. Dan Favell of Bleacher Report published a list of most likely player from each team that will be traded this offseason, and he chose Daniel Gafford for the Mavericks. Obviously, that's somebody that I've kind of been putting in my trade rumor mill as I've started this program. I just think he's kind of the odd man out. You have Derek Lively have that center position as well, as he's been a little bit injury prone, but as you get to a spot where you don't want to land into the second apron, you have to look into the fact that Daniel Gafford is making almost $15 million a year. And not only is that kind of a really movable contract in the NBA for his value, but that's also a contract that might eventually get you into the second apron. And if you can move on from that contract sooner rather than later, I think you'll be in a better spot. But this has been Mavs Latest. I'm Josyah Howard, and let's get it.